Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has previously expressed concerns about Iranian children learning English too early. In contrast, the President Hassan Rouhani, a relative moderate as some believe, believes that the English proficiency will help young people compete in the job market, particularly internationally. It's also reported that the ban does not affect private institutes. It stirred questions, though, as the wealthy have the choice of hiring private tutors, while the lower income sections of the society will face the brunt of the decision. The move comes after massive demonstrations swept across the country in 80 Iranian cities last month, leaving at least 22 people dead. Supreme Leader Khamenei accused the foreign enemies for the arrest. Whether these events are really related, what are the latest trends in the society in Iran? For more on that, we are joined in our Beijing studio, He Wenping, who is a professor and director of the African Studies with Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome, ma'am. In Tehran, we have Hamed Musawi, professor of political science with the University of Tehran. Welcome as well. I want to start with you, Professor Musawi. What do you say about the latest reports, at least, suggesting Iran is banning English teaching in the primary schools, particularly public private schools?
Yes, so I should first of all clarify that English has never been taught in Iranian primary schools. In the Iranian educational system, teaching English starts at the secondary school. The reason an official in the Iranian Education Ministry recently said that English is banned from Iranian primary schools is that some private primary schools had started to teach English and also were getting an extra money because of that. And he was actually clarifying to say that this is not allowed, essentially. But I should clarify that it's not a major change in the sense that in the Iranian educational system, English has always started with the secondary school, and that still remains the same.
Right. But
so
Professor Musawi, some people would argue, you know, the changes actually happen gradually. So when you ban a choice of having English as a subject in schools that would volunteer to do that, particularly in private ones, because they have the space of choosing their own curriculum. So people wonder what will be the next step. Will English maybe, as a subject, will be further limited for Iranian children and Iranian young people? That is the question, Professor Musawi.
Okay. Yes, I mean, it's true that some people, especially in Iran, see this as a form of cultural imperialism by the United States. At the same time, however, I have to point out that you would find a lot of Iranians, especially the young, are actually quite proficient in English. And there are many private institutions that only teach English. So I think at the same time that we're seeing maybe small restrictions, we do have a lot of private institutions that are teaching English. And for the young, I think learning English is something that they want to do. Right. Nevertheless, I think one of the issues that some conservative politicians in Iran have pointed out is they want the educational system to give an option to students so that they can decide whether they want to learn English or whether they want to learn French or Spanish or German, for that matter. Right now in the Iranian system, you have to learn English, so you're not actually given much of an option.
Okay, and let's go to you, Ms. He. Of course, we look at this issue with a bigger framework about where Iran wants to go and will go. That really is the focal point of the rest of the world. Given the fact this has become a big news, whether it is absolutely true or not, given the fact that there are already very clear internal debates, as Professor Musawi just mentioned, inside Iran about that too, what do you say about the nature of this? And the debates eventually will lead us to where?
I think no matter it's true or not true, I think at least the things coming out by itself shows there is quite a debate within the society right now, which is Iran needs to open more to the world, or Iran now needs to close that window or close that door. Because during the past years, with the shining of those nuclear deal, Iran with other 6 countries in the world, and we have seen that President Rouhani has shown that Iran now is willing to open widely and to engage with international society. Actually, even that nuclear deal negotiator, the foreign minister himself, has speaking, you know, very fluent English. Even his counterpart from those 6 countries.
But since then, things also happened. For example, the latest demonstration in 60 cities across Iran, in which the leader of Iran had been accusing so-called foreign intrusion. So after that, people are very sensitive as to what Iran is going to do about what they consider as the foreign invasion.
Yes, absolutely.
Or intrusion, rather.
Yeah, this kind of unrest in the past weeks, I think, give a further push for those people, maybe conservative, those division. They are saying now is not time, not wise to open more with this Western society, because you can see the unrest already happened. So they're calling for maybe tougher with the Western country, particularly given like President Trump has been calling for more sanctions to Iran and also put Iran at the enemy category. So this is a very natural reaction coming from Iran society.
So I want to pose the same question to our Iranian friends as well, Professor Moussaoui, where the question is Iran is going from your perspective. Is it going to be more open even after this 80-city demonstration, or is it going to be likely closed as the rest of the world would worry and concerned? Professor Moussaoui.
Yes, so I think first of all, the announcement made by the Educational Ministry was in very bad taste. I think the timing was very bad. They shouldn't have had made this announcement right after the protests ended, first of all. Secondly, regarding the issue of language in Iran, some conservative politicians who have criticized the use of English language in Iran, and like I said, English is actually very popular in Iran. They point out that the English language has always been a source of American power. So for example, the source of American power in the financial world has been the dollar. In the military world, it has been the American military, and in the cultural world, the American language has been the source of American power, especially American soft power. So from the point of view of these critics, instead of Iran opening up to the Anglo-Saxon world, to the United Kingdom and to the United States, Iran should maybe turn towards other European countries and also maybe Asia, towards China, towards Russia. So essentially, it's not a question of to become completely isolated and closed, but it's rather a question of turning away from the United States, and not just politically, but also culturally.
But there's also reports about Iran not necessarily encouraging Kurdish language education inside the country either. So obviously, if we are talking about diversity, there seems to be a case to be made there.
Yes, like a lot of countries in the Middle East, Iran is made up of different ethnicities. Now, in order to create a unified identity, there's been a lot of emphasis on a unified language.
Persian,
and that's why Farsi has been promoted as the unified language of the country.
So we see that debate, as a matter of fact, Ms. He, not only just in Iran, but also in many other developing and emerging economies who has very different culture compared to, let's just say, the Western civilization. In fact, as a whole, we are facing this issue about how fast and how big you want to open. And how much would that mean for the advancement of your technology, your economy, and to what extent can you also make that well-balanced about protecting your own culture and make sure the lifestyle will be sustainable? So, Ms. He, that's not just an Iran issue. It's an issue for many countries and cultures.
Yes, that's true. Actually, not only for developing country as well, also for developed country. We can see very clearly, like France, they are also defending their French, the culture and the speaking of France, even regarded as a very elegant things. So I think it is a global phenomenon. But to my understanding, I think it needs like a more open way, especially for developing country. On the one hand, you want to defend your own culture. That's absolutely right. But if you don't like learn English, learn those advanced culture, advanced like technology know-how, if we start language learning, how could you develop those other knowledge learning? Right. So language itself is a tool, and also that will open another window for you to know the outside world. Right. So actually, if you just cut this link and then to close this window, that will not help a country to develop itself.
One of the things people also interpret about this piece of news is what is going on in Iran right now. We see a lot of debate, Professor Moussaoui, about so-called conservatives of the country, and also those have been advocating opening up. For example, the one between the president now and also the supreme leader of Iran, who seem to have some kinds of different ideas on certain issues. What exactly is the reality to the extent that you could explain to us, Professor Moussaoui?
Yes, of course, there is a difference of opinion. Some politicians and groups in Iran believe that Iran should improve its relations with the West, especially the United States. Others see the United States in a much more negative light. They point to the idea of U.S. intervention, and I'm not talking about these recent protests, but some major interventions such as the 1953 coup d'etat in Iran, which overthrew a democratic government. So other politicians and groups are very distrustful of the United States, and they believe that Iran should actually make alliances with other countries in the world. And I think you see that debate within society as well. So I don't think that is something maybe unique to Iran either. It also takes place in other countries, but it is an important debate nevertheless.
Yeah, but Professor Moussaoui, there is reports suggesting that the president has been very pro to those demonstrators, particularly young people, that are trying to look for new ways to improve the society and have more open society. And that certainly has divided his opinion with some of the conservatives who are also having very good political support in the hierarchy in Iran. So are we seeing behind this cultural debate really so-called political struggle? And the apparent political struggle, where is it going to lead Iran to? That is the biggest question mark, isn't it, Professor Moussaoui?
Yes, so it's very true. In the recent protests, the majority of protesters had economic grievances, and I think these were rightful economic grievances. They were tired about the very high unemployment rate, the stagnation in the economy, and the majority of the protesters, I would say, were actually peaceful, especially in the first few days, and they had rightful economic grievances. But after a while, we saw a group of rioters that we should distinguish from the actual protesters. And the rioters, they started to burn banks and loot shops and even tried to take over a police station. And at that stage, even President Rouhani and reformist politicians were no longer in support. And I think part of the reasons the protests died down and we're not seeing protests anymore is because of those riots and because it became violent. Nevertheless, as you point out in your question...
Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, so I was saying when the riots started to happen, you did see a unified stance by both the Rouhani government and the supreme leader. On other issues, though, there are important divides between Iranian politicians. The most important division right now is on the nuclear issue and the nuclear deal with the United States, with the Iranian conservatives saying that essentially the deal with the United States has not improved the Iranian economy, and that's why we are seeing so many protests in the streets. While other politicians, especially Rouhani and the reformists, saying that no, we should still keep abiding by the nuclear deal and hopefully things will improve.
Right. Ms. He, the economic grievances, as President Rouhani was saying to the media, is one of the reasons behind the demonstrations. However, he said the people should not ignore further reasons related to that besides the economic grievances. So certainly that shows the divide, as Professor Musawi just beautifully illustrated for us. So given that divide, given the history of Iran, and given Iran's rather tight and intense relationship now, tense relationship with the West, particularly the United States, what are some of the things that we should watch very closely for future Iran?
Well, first of all, I think one thing we need closely watch is this nuclear deal itself. As far as I know now, the Iranian side, they have also, like my colleagues mentioned, have different point of view. One opinion is maybe they will eyes on eyes with the United States. Another, maybe they want to still buy the time to make the full use of those opportunity and trying to get those support coming from the European countries. So there are different voices there, but I think this kind of language issue itself tells us one of the message. That is, within the Iran society, especially in those power circle, and others two opinions. One use like those lift this head scarf ban, that is very openness, and then caused some kind of resentment on the street. And now, so the language issue is one of the coming back to offset this openness.
Some steps forward,
Yeah,
some steps back, some would argue, but for now we have to wrap it up. Iran story is always one of the most interesting stories the rest of the world is watching very closely. For now, I want to thank both of you, He Wenping, Hamed Musawi, for being with us. Really appreciate it. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.